Montreal history, from indigenous roots to the birth of Ville-Marie. Montreal, or Montreal in French, is the largest city in Quebec, the second largest in Canada, and one of the most vibrant cities in North America. Founded in 1642 as Ville-Marie, meaning the City of Mary, it later took the name Montreal from Mount Royal, the triple-peaked mountain at the heart of the early settlement. The city developed on the island of Montreal, along with a few smaller surrounding islands, making it a natural hub between Ottawa and Quebec City. Indigenous roots before European contact. Long before Europeans arrived, the island of Montreal was home to indigenous peoples for thousands of years. Archaeological evidence shows that First Nations communities lived there as early as 4,000 years ago. By the year 1000, they had already begun cultivating maize and building fortified villages. Among them were the St. Lawrence Iroquoians, a distinct group related to the Haudenosaunee of present-day New York. They established the village of Hochelaga at the foot of Mount Royal around the 14th century. When the French explorer Jacques Cartier visited Hochelaga in 1535, he described it as a thriving community with more than 1,000 inhabitants. These early communities played an essential role in the foundation of Montreal's history, though much of their legacy was later disrupted by European disease, migration, and conflict. The arrival of Europeans. By the early 1600s, French explorers were venturing into the St. Lawrence Valley. In 1603, Samuel de Champlain noted that the St. Lawrence Iroquoians had mysteriously vanished. Historians believe epidemics, intertribal wars, or migration likely caused their disappearance. In 1611, Champlain set up a fur trading post on the island, laying the groundwork for future settlement. By 1639, the Notre Dame Society of Montreal secured rights to the land, with the goal of establishing a Roman Catholic mission to convert and educate indigenous peoples. Founding of Ville-Marie. The true birth of Montreal came in 1642, when Paul Chomedy de Maisonneuve led a group of settlers to the island. On May 17th of that year, they founded Ville-Marie along the southern shore, building a small chapel and a hospital under the leadership of Jean Mance. Life in the new colony was harsh. Within a year, the settlement faced repeated Iroquois raids. By 1652, the population was reduced to only 50 people, and the survival of the colony was in doubt. Maisonneuve returned to France, where he recruited 100 new settlers to reinforce the community. Their arrival in 1653 secured the future of Ville-Marie, setting Montreal on the path to becoming one of North America's great cities. Montreal in the late 17th and 18th century. By 1685, Ville-Marie had grown to around 600 colonists, most of whom lived in modest wooden houses. Despite its small size, the settlement quickly became a vital hub for the fur trade and a launching point for further exploration across North America. But life was far from peaceful. In 1689, the English allied Iroquois launched a devastating attack on the nearby settlement of Lachine, resulting in the worst massacre in the history of New France. This event left a deep scar on the early community and highlighted the constant dangers faced by settlers. As Montreal developed, the Sulpician order gained influence in the colony. To strengthen French control and settlement, they encouraged the Mohawk to relocate from the fur trading post at Ville-Marie. This led to the creation of several mission villages, including Conoake, located south of the St. Lawrence River. Later, some Mohawk families moved to Kanesatake, near the Ottawa River, and eventually to Akwesasne upriver. These three communities remain important Mohawk reserves in Canada today. Montreal remained under French colonial rule until 1760, when the city fell to British forces during the 7 Years' War. With that defeat, all of New France was surrendered to Great Britain, marking the beginning of a new era in Montreal's history. Interestingly, the settlement was officially known as Ville-Marie in documents until 1705. That year, the name Montreal began appearing in records, though the island itself had long been referred to as the Island of Montreal. American occupation, 1775 to 1776. During the American Revolution, Montreal briefly fell under American control. The conflict began after Benedict Arnold captured Fort Ticonderoga in May 1775, which became a launching point for the American invasion of Quebec later that year. On November 13, 1775, American forces under Richard Montgomery entered Montreal after British Governor Guy Carleton abandoned the city. With little resistance, Montreal came under American occupation. Montgomery soon moved on to Quebec City, leaving General David Wooster in charge of Montreal. The campaign quickly turned against the Americans. Montgomery was killed in the failed attack on Quebec City, and Benedict Arnold took over command. Wooster left Montreal in early 1776, passing leadership to Brigadier General Moses Hazen, who worked closely with Arnold to defend the city. In May 1776, the situation escalated at the Battle of the Cedars. Colonel Timothy Bedell's garrison, sent to protect Montreal's western approaches, surrendered to British forces led by George Forster. Forster pushed toward Montreal, while Arnold tried to hold the nearby borough of Lachine. Skirmishes followed, including the burning of Fort Senneville and prisoner exchanges, but ultimately the Americans could not maintain their grip on Montreal. By June, word came that Carleton was returning with a British fleet. Knowing they could not hold the city, Arnold and his forces abandoned Montreal on June 15, 1776, attempting to set parts of it ablaze before retreating back to Fort Ticonderoga. The American occupation had lasted only 7 months. It left behind bitter disputes, failed prisoner exchanges, and court-martials of American officers accused of poor leadership. But it also marked a pivotal moment in Montreal history, when the city found itself at the center of an international conflict that would reshape North America. Montreal in the mid-20th century and beyond. During World War II, Montreal was at the center of controversy when Mayor Camillien Houde openly protested against conscription. He urged residents to ignore the federal government's registry of men and women, a move that angered Ottawa. As a result, Houde was imprisoned in a camp until 1944, when the government formally introduced conscription to strengthen the Allied war effort. At the same time, Montreal played an unexpected role on the world stage. It became the official residence of the exiled Luxembourg royal family during the war. By 1951, Montreal's population had passed 1 million, cementing its role as one of the great cities of North America. Yet, the city was beginning to face new challenges. Toronto's rapid growth threatened Montreal's long-standing position as Canada's economic capital. By the 1940s, the Toronto Stock Exchange had already surpassed its Montreal counterpart in trading volume, signaling a shift in financial power. The opening of the St. Lawrence Seaway in 1959 further changed the city's economic position. While the project improved international shipping, it allowed vessels to bypass Montreal, causing businesses to relocate and gradually eroding the city's dominance. Despite these setbacks, the 1960s were a time of major progress. Montreal's skyline rose with Canada's tallest skyscrapers, expressways transformed transportation, and the Montreal Metro subway system opened. The decade culminated in Expo 67, the World's Fair that showcased Montreal to the world and became a symbol of optimism and cultural pride. Turbulence in the 1970s and 1980s. The following decades brought significant social and political change. The French-speaking majority sought to preserve their language and culture, pushing back against the dominance of English-speaking elites in business and politics. These tensions reached a peak during the October crisis of 1970, when the city was shaken by political violence. In 1976, the Part 1 Québécois, advocating for Quebec sovereignty, was elected to power. This political shift, combined with economic uncertainty, prompted many businesses and English-speaking residents to leave Montreal. That same year, the city hosted the 1976 Summer Olympics. While the Games gave Montreal international prestige, the costly Olympic Stadium plunged the city into decades of debt. By the 1980s and early 1990s, Montreal's economy lagged behind other Canadian cities, marking a difficult period in its history. Tragedy struck in 1989 with the École Polytechnique massacre, one of Canada's darkest moments. A lone gunman killed 14 women and injured 14 others before taking his own life, an event that deeply scarred Montreal and the entire nation. Montreal in the 21st century. In the early 2000s, the Quebec government sought to reorganize Montreal by merging it with 27 surrounding municipalities on the island. On January 1st, 2002, a unified city was created, covering the entire island of Montreal. However, the mergers were deeply unpopular, particularly in English-speaking suburbs, many of which saw the move as politically motivated. By 2006, after a series of referendums, 15 municipalities voted to demerge and regain their independence, though they remain tied to Montreal through a shared agglomeration council that managed island-wide services. These mergers were not entirely new. Montreal had previously annexed 27 towns and villages beginning with Hochelaga in 1883, with Pointe-aux Trembles being the last in 1982. The 21st century mergers, however, reflected ongoing debates about governance, identity, and the balance of power within Quebec's largest city. Montreal in the 21st century. The 21st century has marked a new era of growth and revitalization for Montreal. The city has experienced a resurgence in both its economic strength and cultural vibrancy, positioning itself once again as a dynamic hub in North America. New residential skyscrapers have transformed the skyline, while major infrastructure projects have reshaped the city's landscape. These include the construction of 2 world-class superhospitals, the Centre Hospitalier de l'Université de Montréal and the McGill University Health Center, as well as the creation of the Quartier de Spectacles, which has become a cultural heart for festivals, performances, and public events. Massive improvements to transportation have also fueled the city's renewal. The Tucket interchange has been rebuilt, the Décarie and Dorval interchanges reconfigured, and the Champlain Bridge reconstructed. The development of the Réseau Express Metropolitan, subway line extensions, and the introduction of new subway cars reflect Montreal's investment in modern, sustainable transit. Griffintown, once an industrial neighborhood, has been revitalized through gentrification, adding to Montreal's urban renaissance. At the same time, Trudeau International Airport has undergone a complete transformation and expansion, strengthening the city's global connections. The completion of Quebec Autoroute 30 and the construction of a new toll bridge to Laval have further boosted accessibility and regional growth. Today, Montreal stands as a city that blends its historic roots with modern ambition. It is a center of culture, innovation, and diversity, a city that continues to reinvent itself while honoring its unique past. If you enjoyed this journey through Montreal history, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to History Love, your go-to YouTube channel for exploring the fascinating stories of the past.